Hello friends, today we will be looking into the concept of ER diagram notations and constraints on relationship. First of all, let us look into the different ER diagram notations which will be used in ER diagram. So, first of all, the first representation which will be used in a ER diagram and the most important one is an entity. An entity is represented by a rectangular box. An entity is a real world object which has existence in the world. That is, for example, a person. A person is an entity. It has its existence in the world. Coming to weak entity. A weak entity is a one which is dependent on an owner entity or a strong entity for its existence. That is, it does not have its existence of own. That is, it is dependent on other entities for its existence. Coming to attribute. Attributes are the ones which are the properties of entities. That is, it defines what an entity is. For example, a person. A person has a name, address, SSN, that is social security number, etc. These are the attributes of the person entity. Now coming to relationship. Relationship tells us the association of entities in a particular relationship. That is how an entity acts in a particular relationship. Now coming to identifying relationship. Identifying relationship are used whenever a weak entity is used. That is, it is a relationship which is used to identify weak entities. Now coming to derived attributes. Derived attributes are the one which can have more than one value. That is, for example, age attribute and date of birth attribute. You can derive your age from your date of birth also. Now coming to primary key. A primary key is used to uniquely identify an entity. So it is written same as an attribute but with the underline. Coming to multi-valued attribute. Multi-valued attributes are the attributes which have more than one value. For example, name. Name can be divided into first name, middle name and last name. There are still more notations which are used to draw a ER diagram, but these are the important notations which will be used more frequently. Now going to the second topic, that is cardinality and participation constraints. So now what is cardinality constraint? Cardinality tells us the maximum number of entity instances that participate in a relationship. Now there is something called cardinality ratio and it is used only for binary relationship. That is a relationship that includes only two entities. Now coming to participation. Participation, it tells about the existence of one entity because of another entity in a relationship. So it tells us how an entity participates in a particular relationship, whether it participates totally or partially in a relationship. Now first we'll look into the participation constraints and next we'll go to cardinality constraints. Now participation constraints are of two types, total and partial. Total means all the entities need not participate in a relationship. Partial. Minimum number of instances all entities should be related is what is called total. Total total participation is also called existence dependence. Now here is an example. Department, DPT short form, and project. A department controls many projects. So department can have n number of projects and a project is controlled by only one department. This represents the cardinality ratio. Now coming to participation constraint. Here a department controls a project. This department participates totally in this project's controls relationship. Now project is controlled by a department. A department may or may not have a project. Hence it is dependent partially in this relationship. Now coming to cardinalities. There are basically four cardinality ratios. 1:1, 1:n, n:1 and m:n. Now the first one being 1:1. Employee manages a department. Here an employee who is a manager manages the department. So only one employee is participating in this relationship and hence the cardinality is 1. A department is managed by an employee. So only one employee will be managing the department or the department will be managed by only one employee. So here the cardinality ratio is 1. So 1:1 is the cardinality ratio. Now coming to the participation constraint. Employee manages the department. A department, so employee participates totally in the relationship manages. That is, an employee will manage a department. Now department may or may not have a manager, so it participates partial in the managers relationship. Now coming to 1:n constraint. So employee has a dependent. An employee may or may not have a dependent, but if he has, he may have more than one dependent on him. Now dependent is dependent on only one employee. So 1. An employee can have n dependents, and a dependent is dependent on only one employee. And here the participation of employee relation in dependent has dependent is total, and dependent in has dependent relationship is partial. That is, he may or may not have a dependent. That is, employee may or may not have a dependent. Now coming to n:1 constraint. Employee works for a department. Employee works for only one department. So 1. A department may have any number of employees. So n. So the ratio is n:1. Now coming to participation constraint. Employee works for a specific department. So the employee's participation in works for is total. A department has an employee which works for it only. So the participation of department in works for is also total. Now coming to m:n cardinality ratio. Employee works on project. An employee can work on many projects. So n. A project can have many employees which work on it. So it is m. So the cardinality ratio is m:n. Here a relationship works on has its own attribute, that is hours. Employee may be having hours or project may be having hours, but we can give this attribute only to works on. Now coming to the participation constraint. Employee works on project. So employee participates totally in works on relationship, and project also participates totally in the works on relationship. That is, a project has to have an employee for it to be completed. So this is all about this tutorial. Thank you for watching. Please do like and subscribe to this channel.